Welcome, game dev adventurers, to the Indie Game Lunch Hour. Today, we're talking with Lara Guzelsoy about every prop having a story.
The Indie Game Lunch Hour.
Come one, come all to our live magical podcast where we give game developers the chance to hear stories of breaking in from industry experts, as well as directly ask them questions about their areas of expertise in the second half of each episode. As always, I'm your host here, Willem Delventhal, the headmaster at the Indie Game Academy, and joining me today is Laura Guzelsoy. Laura is an environmental artist at WAI Studios, and will be talking with us about every prop having a story. Welcome to the show, Laura. It was a pleasure meeting you at GDC this last year. What are you having for lunch today?
Well, I'm sorry to break it to you. I already had my lunch. I had a really good soup. But now I have a water. So everyone stay hydrated, drink water. It's pretty hot in here, so keep being hydrated. What are you having for lunch?
Currently just water. I'm actually on a intermittent fasting period because I've become too chubby, and so I'm not eating yet.
Oh, well, I hope the fasting goes really well. If that's okay. I also used to fast too, so understandable.
I'm actually a big fan of intermittent fasting. It seems like it doesn't work for everybody, but it really works for me because it like simplifies the act of dieting. I just don't eat until this time, and like that's pretty easy. There's not a whole I'm not tracking calories or anything. I just don't eat until 12.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Sometimes it's good for the mind. Yeah, for sure.
I like it. All right. Well, welcome to the show, Lara. We got to meet at GDC this year, and in fact, at an after party where we met the voice of Asterion from Baldur's Gate 3 together. Pretty cool experience.
Lovely. It was very fun.
Yeah, he was such a sweetheart, everybody. So everyone knows. And now you're here to talk about your experience with environmental art.
Yeah, of course.
Definitely. I'm excited to chat about that for a bit. Before that, as always, our first question on this show is for the origin story. So, Laura, can you tell us where you are in games now and then how you got there?
First of all, right now I am most of a freelance environment artist. I do have a contract with WAI Studios. Not only that, but I'm also making solo game with a friend. So 2-people game. We just started. Hopefully that's going to go well. But yeah, overall, it's been going pretty well. Sorry, it's kind of... I can hear my own voice. What's happening?
Oh, that is interesting. Let me check this very quickly.
Do you hear me talk 2 times? Oh, okay, now it's better. Yes, thank you so much.
You also sound fine on this end, so I didn't do anything.
Okay.
You sound fine on this end, so as long as you can answer the questions without getting too distracted, you can just ignore it. Craig is not hearing that.
Okay, perfect. Well, yes. Before I got into environment art, I was most drawing as a hobby, and I grew up in Istanbul, Turkey. Right now I'm also in Istanbul with my family, but before I moved to US, I was able to do arts, but my parents wanted me to carry it on as a hobby. And, you know, I wanted to be different. I was like, no, I want to pursue art. But not only art in a traditional form, but more in a digital form. So I get to look around and check which colleges are good for experimenting and learning more about digital art as well as 3D. So I came across Ringling College of Arts and Design. Yeah, I think it's still echoing.
I'm not sure how that's possible because I'm definitely hearing only to my headphones. Give me 1 second. Let me try this.
Yeah, I am Turkish. I am from Istanbul. Amazing place.
Okay. Has this fixed the double talk at all?
Amazing food. Yeah,
Has this fixed the double talk?
I think it's better now.
Okay, weird. My external mic was somehow causing it. I don't get it, but it's fine. Let's keep going.
It's totally okay. So when I was in Istanbul, I studied hard. I got into a science high school, and at that time I learned how to code. And at that time I was mostly doing coding for Arduino and engines, but my teacher taught me 3D modeling with SketchUp. So I got morally interested in 3D modeling at that point. I was like, okay, coding is fun. You know, it's good that you can solve problems and think at the spot. So that was good for my mind. But I really liked the idea of 3D modeling. And after that high school, I applied to this program called United World Colleges. And I would recommend that program to everyone if you want to broaden your horizon and travel abroad as well as studying abroad. You get to meet a lot of people and you get to learn, study IB. So with United World College, I was lucky enough to go to Canada and study my last 2 years of high school there. And with United World College under my belt, I applied to one of my dream college, Ringling College of Art and Design. And I got accepted, and I remember the day I got accepted. I was so happy. I ran around. But most of the time, that's how I got into games, was I wanted to do arts, and I've been playing games. I do have an older brother that showed me Call of Duty, League of Legends, all those games. Then I got into Sims, just a lot of games that I was always wanting to make my own game. So, and here I am. So very happy to be here. Thank you for having me once again.
Amazing. It's awesome to have you on. It does seem like somehow I am causing this echo, so I'm going to be muted. I am currently away from my regular setup. I'll be muted unless I am jumping into talk. It's fantastic to hear. It's fantastic to hear that story. It definitely, we're in a time period, I think, where a lot of juniors have lost faith in breaking into the game industry. In many ways, justifiably so. We've had multiple years straight of it seemingly getting harder and harder to break in. So I wonder if we could start there for just a second. How did this process feel for you? You do have one of these earlier professional contracts at WAI Studios, and you're working on your own game right now with a friend. What is your general perception of breaking into games right now? How do you feel about that process? And is it something that you still recommend to people?
I think I definitely agree. It has definitely gotten harder to break into the industry. I feel like it has always been hard, but now after COVID, there has been a lot of layoffs because during COVID times there was over hiring, and I applied to Ringling during the COVID times. So at that time, the games industry was rising, and I feel like I kind of fell for the trap because it was like top 10, jobs that you can work in remote, and then it was like games, and I was like, I do like games, and I would love to be an environment artist. So I joined the ride. And while I was in Ringling, the ride started to, the roller coaster started to pause for a second. And now there's drops of high layoffs. I've seen students that graduated after getting a job, then getting laid off a month later or a few months later. It's definitely saddening to see. But I also see a lot of indie companies publishing games that have become successful. So there's a difference between trying to pursue AAA and try to pursue indie or your own games. And I feel like checking indie games like Deltarune, Hades, like really good, like Celeste, those are always making me feel hopeful. And recently I played this game called Poco, and I also reposted it on my LinkedIn because it's a student-made game and it's for free. I would recommend everyone to play it. This isn't an advertisement. It's just after playing that game, I felt way more hopeful than I felt after graduating, because that game just felt like, I just felt like this was the reason why I wanted to do game art in the first place. It just felt really artistic. Everything had a story about how you should pursue your dreams. So it's definitely a hard path. It has been harder, and I feel like you also know, but it's also making me feel hopeful for future, if you want to pursue your own games, that is. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think a stat that I found just the other night when I was looking up a couple of things, the number of indie studios founded in 2024 was 600%, 6 times greater than in 2019. About 2,000 indie studios were founded in 2019, and 1,200 or 12,000 were founded in 2024 on its own. And I bet any money, there's no stats live yet, but I bet any money that 2025 is going to be even greater than that. The indie revolution really does feel like it's here, partly out of requirement, partly because there's just not as much work as there are people making games. And I agree, all of those tiny success stories, all those indie success stories, I should say, are incredibly exciting and just like almost fulfilling. Because to me, the wonder of games is the art. And I think at some point in the last decade, we realized that games are a massive moneymaker. It is a huge area that makes so much money. We're half the age of the film industry, and we make twice as much money as they do, even after all of this insanity in the past couple of years. And so the capitalists have moved in. But I think like I think it's worth remembering that we're here because we're artists. 95%. I talk to so many people on this show and in life at events, etc. And 95% of the people who are in games because they're artists and because they love games. So don't forget, why you're here, and absolutely strive and seek for whatever you can in making games. I think more recently, my advice has been to work on games however you can, which largely means launching your own games. There's a chart that I love sharing, which maybe I'll go try to find as a resource, that shows that the first game made by a brand new indie studio typically only makes about $300 US, which is in some ways a little depressing when you consider that the average length of time it takes to release an indie game is 2.5 years. So that is $125 a year. But by the fifth game made by that same studio, you're making around $3 million. So that is not going to guarantee that you make any kind of real money from your games. Definitely not. We're a boom and bust industry. But I do think that having a sense of optimism and trying for it anyway, and trying for it in any way that you are capable of controlling yourself is terribly important. Don't give up.
I definitely agree. Like, literally do it for the love of the game. Like, I definitely agree with that.
100% agree with that one. I think so. Let's get into, now that we've pep talked everybody through the existential crisis that is the current game industry. Let's
keep staying determined.
You got it. Let's jump into props for a second and environment art. That's an area that a lot of people love to work. I love my environmental artists. As a game designer myself, my work is typically mechanical. My work is typically, let's figure out how you play this game, what the features of the game are. And then I typically am not a level designer, so being able to hand off my metaphysical ideas and then have the world manifest because of some cool level and environmental artists, that's one of the best parts of game dev. So please give us an intro. Your topic that you proposed to us was every prop has a story. So give us the introduction to that concept.
Yes, of course. Well, I feel like the title speaks for itself, how every prop has a story and they're not just an asset, a 3D asset that you should be making. Let's think about a game that you really like, or an environment that you see, or not only that, but a really good photo that you come across. And think about what makes that photo or what makes that environment, what makes that game screenshot look approachable to you, look appeasable. It's those small assets that create this whole story of the screenshot, or these small stuff that you see while walking in a forest that's pulling out this whole forest into the theme that you see. So when we think about how these props create this story, they're not just a decoration. They're already general details that weave a larger story. When we create, as an environment artist, assets, the biggest thing that we think about is 4 words: the function of the asset, the context that the asset serves, so where it's placed and how it's worn down, what has happened to this asset that you see, and the emotion, the mood that this asset creates to the viewer or the player. And these all create this world building around it. So it creates a bigger narrative that we can all see. Let's think about a broken statue rather than a full statue. How did this break? Is it from a fallen empire? Is this from an earthquake? And how is it got broken? Or maybe there are vines that are coming out of this broken statue, showing that it has been a while. It has been centuries, maybe. So these all assets that you see kind of create a story. And I think that one of the reasons why environment artist is hard is you can open ArtStation and you can see a really good asset that's too realistic, but does it showcase a story? So that's what separates from environment prop to an environment art. But what do you think?
Yeah, I love that. I am thinking back. So one of my favorite hobbies is kit bashing and model making. I love Warhammer 40K. This is something I talk about on this show, I'm sure, far too often. I love Warhammer 40K. I love models in general. I love D&D and tabletop. And as a result, I spend a lot of time messing around with little plastic pieces. And my favorite part of the entire hobby is kit bashing custom figures, which, for those who may not know, is the combination of typically multiple kits as well as other tools like sculpting resin and bits of styrofoam and things like that, and just trash, and gluing it all together into a cohesive figure, model, terrain piece, character. And one of the simple rules of kit bashing is that if you're going to add a piece to your model, have a reason to add that piece lore-wise, narratively. So it's not just this looks cool. It's well, it's because this character thinks that this thing is lucky, or it's not just because it's cool to have a scope on the rifle or whatever. It's because well, this character spends more time taking long crack shots. And what that winds up doing is it makes a cohesive character, and then it also adds depth of play that even if somebody never learned that information, you can kind of sense. And then when your player, in this case, we're talking about games, when your player discovers those things, when they do find out that information, when they go, oh, that's why this exists because of this reason, that adds so much depth to the world that almost instantly attracts you to that game even harder. So that's my version of what you're talking about, I think. The magic of putting a little plastic piece on a figure and going, yeah, that has a purpose.
That's basically it. That's the whole purpose of environment art and making assets, is to think wisely on why do you add those scratches and why do you add these little details. Like, not only they look cute, or like they look scary, but it's there for a reason. So definitely being mindful as you create these props of the world that you're trying to build is enhance the world and the story that you already have. So like with one screenshot, how much of a story can you tell to the audience?
Yeah, that attention to detail is hugely important. My brothers and I love playing games together. That's how we stay connected. And one of the games we're playing right now is Peak, which is the climbing game that you've seen all over the internet, everybody. And you should play it. It's a fantastic indie success story.
Peak.
It's great.
It's made in a month.
Which is wild. And also, hey, I see at least Christian here from Foundry. That's the kind of game we're looking for in the future. Fantastic example of a game. But I have a critique, which is that the levels are procedurally generated, which on one hand is really smart. If you don't know what procedural generation means, that means you're creating some kind of algorithm or a set of building blocks that code then puts together. You aren't designing the level. The world is being generated by code. The problem with procedural generation is and always has been that it winds up feeling very samey. You can have 1,000 versions of a level, yes, but it kind of all feels like the same level because the algorithm doesn't actually change. And I think that there's a similar problem with AI. AI is an amalgamation, a sort of summary of other people's assets. And as a result, the AI didn't go, yes, those scratches are there because at one point this player had a dog and that dog escaped, And those tiny little moments are what endears us to a world. Elden Ring is one of my favorite examples of environmental storytelling. When you don't even learn the story for most of the environment, but you feel it. You walk through, a field full of impaled giants, and you go, holy shit, something happened here. And you can indeed go and find out what happened if you're curious and want to get deeper into the world. But that's something that I feel quickly generated either through procedural generation or AI or any other means environment just can't compete with. That's a part of the magic that environmental artist brings to a game.
Has to have the human touch, for sure. I'm not against procedural generated creation. I do have friends that are technical artists. It's definitely the faster way. It's I guess not easier way for coding, but easier way for environment. But I guess it creates what is the purpose of the game that you want to sell? Do you want to create a story through this, or do you want to make people want to play it over and over again with a friend? But I guess Repo, I guess you can find some stories with the assets in there. It's the mansion, and you can still play with friends. And it is kind of procedural generated, yet it still has some stories of the assets that you carry. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, totally. Thank you for always giving me the invite to come and talk. That's great. Yeah, I think to be clear, I agree. Procedural generation has a place. I think Peak was very smart to make it procedurally generated. But I'm talking a bit about of the niche that an environmental artist fits. And environmental artists can absolutely do procedural generation too, by the way. And there can also be combinations. There are many games that will procedurally generate the whole world, and then an environmental artist will come and populate it with beautiful corners. But I do think that my favorite games anyway have that narrative world influence. These little moments where you go, holy shit, that's the grave of, somebody who died that I found their wife's body 2 acts ago. Those moments really leave a lasting impression on you. I missed, I think, two of the things that you mentioned for environmental artists. You said every prop should have function and context. What were the other two?
So shape and color also joins in those, as well as the placement. But I guess shape and color is similar, like the way it's intended. Let's say if you want to give a warm color, that it's gonna give more of a passion, or if you're gonna make it cool, it's going to be more of a sadness. You know those English teachers that are like, okay, the window, like thing is blue because the author is sad. I guess that can be into that perspective, but not really. Sometimes even every shape and color of the prop can tell a story, as well as the placement of the prop. Let's say I'm putting a candle right next to, like a lit candle right next to a book, and the book is slowly, about to burn. So rather than putting the candle in the top, so even the placements of these small, yeah, curtains. Thank you. Yeah, the drapes. Even these little placements of the asset can tell a whole story. We can think about like a shed. Like most of the times, environment artists, we also have to think about player path. That's a known word in the games industry of how to lead players to a path that you want to make, not like forcing them, but with lights, direction, or props, setting props there to make it more interesting. And what we learn is if you make a shed, people are going to think it's a shed. But let's say if you start to add a valve, if you start to add hay bales and a carriage, now that shed has a story. That it can be a barn. There might be an animal that if you enter. So those little placements and those little storytellings can go a long way.
Agree with that completely. So here, how about this? The function, context, shape, color, and placement is a great sort of starting building block for when somebody wants to work in environmental art. But this show, I think in particular, is for those who are just getting started and are trying to learn and decide their own paths. What are some of the activities, practices, exercises that you might recommend somebody who wants to work in environmental art do?
I would say what our teachers recommended first was to copy a photo. And I agree, like copying a photo is really good if you want to go AAA. But before you copy a photo, try to understand the photo or try to understand why that photo works. Like what pulls you to that photo. So investigate, be like a detective. Look at all these small patterns that you see, not only in a photo that you're about to copy, but in real life too. So try to notice every small details that you can notice in a post office or in a bin, a trash bin. See why it's very moldy or why there's a lot of, graffiti around it, showcasing that it's a hotspot for, vandalizers or cool artists. So definitely open your eyes and try to learn not only from games, but also from real world. Yeah, the little path. Yes, that's the player path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I like that last statement. Try not to learn just from games, but also from the real world. That applies to, I think, more or less every single discipline. In games, for instance, when I'm talking with fresh game designers, I love to direct people to look at gamified systems. So, like the Monopoly McDonald's promo that they do every year that gets so many people to go and buy McDonald's. Like, why does that work? Is it just a lottery ticket? Is it deeper? Does it matter that it's Monopoly? There's a lot that we can learn. Or old school games. I love looking at old board games and learning why players still play those. My dad and I got super into the Royal Game of pretty recently, which is a 4,000-year-old game we found in ancient Babylon. And it's like a dope game. It's really good. And it's incredibly simple.
That sounds so cool.
You can buy it on Amazon for like $30. The Royal Game of UR. But yes, all right. Now, what about what are some of your tips and tricks? You gave us these 5 staples for us to use. How do I make a really compelling world? What are some of the things that you really like to bring into a world on your own? Some of your own tricks, techniques, staples to make a world feel deep.
That's a really good question. First of all, sometimes it's just a calling that you're like, oh, it would be so cool if this was a game. Like me and my friend Finley, we wanted to do biome for our 3rd year project, and we wanted to add these mushroom people that go around. and my friend Finley for her thesis would say, oh, it would be so cool if you're a bug that runs around. So it's all about that spark of an idea that starts, then that idea carries on to the environment. Be like, okay, how do the mushrooms grow? How do they spore? How do they start the mitosis program of how do they evolve? Or how does the mushroom growing these poisonous mushrooms affect the environment around it? So if you want to think about an idea that you would like to play as, think about how that idea affects the world around it, or how it got to be. So what brought this poisonous mushroom to the biome? Who brought this? So always ask questions. And if you feel stuck, always go for a friend or for a person and always pitch your ideas. Pitch your ideas, think about the environment that you're about to create. Lot of Pinterest searching, but also don't dwell on it too much. Like keep studying and keep learning, but don't go into the loop of learning. Then you get, burnt out. Always keep working while you search. I think that's also what I learned. But what do you think? How does it go for you?
Well, I was curious. I think one of the things that's interesting about what you're suggesting here is a heavy crossover, a heavy collaboration with narrative. I'm going to ask a follow-up question instead of talking more. Do you tend to work heavily with narrative and writing? Do they tend to give you work? They're like, I really want to suggest this in the environment. Is it a bit more where you just come to them and you're like, oh, I had this cool idea. What do you think? Does this fit? Is it a little bit more disparate, disconnected? How do you actually collaborate with narrative, and how do you make your own narrative decisions on a team that might have a narrative designer?
That's a good question. I think environments can either go hand in hand with a narration, or if you want to look at it more architecturally, you can, I guess, dump the narrative idea and be like, okay, I'm going to add these small props in later. Just thinking about a cohesive idea of what you want the environment to look like, then slowly changing, or not changing, but think about a big picture, then slowly make the picture smaller of okay, I want this really regal, like my thesis, really like sci-fi Islamic courtyard. And then you think about, okay, how can I make this sci-fi? And how can I make this prop sci-fi that will fit? And let's say that's less of a narrative, but more of a world telling that you want to create. And then if you want to think about a person that's about to enter, okay, you can be like, maybe I want a thief to enter this place. And you start to break down the palace. Let's say there's a breaking down. So then you can change the environment based on the narrative if your narrative isn't fully fleshed out. Or you can think about a fleshed out narrative and try to build the environment around the narrative. So I think it can go either way.
I think one of the, I'm actually going to get us to community questions here in a second, and Rick is going to ask a follow-up question. I think one of the magic aspects of game development is collaboration. Almost inevitably, your game becomes better with more minds involved in building it. And that's not always true. There's definitely some too many cooks that can happen. But a lot of the time, when you're in a room with especially somebody that you enjoy and can hang out with, and you're just shooting ideas back and forth, and you're just excited by those ideas, and you're having a good time together, I think that almost always leads to a better game. So if you, the environmental artist, are sitting down with a narrative person and you're like, oh man, what if we told the story of an ancient dead king over here in the corner, and it doesn't really matter, it's just cool. And if the narrative designer gets excited about that, and the two of you throw those ideas back and forth, that's sometimes the best stuff.
Yeah, it can go both ways. I think we forget to include that it's a two-way street. You don't have to have a fleshed out narrative, then an environment. The environment artist can be like, oh, it would be cool to add this. Then the narration gets added because of the environment. Hello,
yes.
Rick.
Yes, awesome. All right, so we're going to jump into community questions now. Rick has our first one on deck. You want to jump in, Rick?
Yeah, so Will already started leading into this with my question is about the creative process of collaborating with your other team members. Can you talk about some of your favorite memories of creative collaboration, and specifically with the narrative people, but also if you've done in collaboration with the people who are doing level design or the engineers, like what kinds of collaborations have you had to improve the storytelling?
That's a really good question. When I worked at Blockville, we would always have weekly meetings. Like I don't remember the name, but every 2 weeks we would have a meeting, and every Friday we would also have meetings with the full team. And I like those meetings because we get to see what we have done, and we get to show what we have done, and we get to see what the other people in the groups have done. And with that, we could always add, oh, wouldn't it be cool to add this level style? Like an environment artist can pop in and say that to the level designer, or the narrative person can come up to the environment artist and be like, oh, it would be cool if this would also happen, or like, oh, I love that way. So I really like the brainstorming time, as well as those meetings where we can always jump in and create this conversation so the game feels cohesive.
Nice. So what I'm hearing is you want to make sure that you take time to do show and tell on your works in progress, and then see how you can creatively feed off of each other.
Yeah, of course. Because at the end of the day, we all want to make these amazing games, and we want to make the game feel cohesive. So that's the biggest keystone, is to always keep in communication.
Yeah. So sometimes somebody's whimsical thought just like sparks something in you. You're just like, oh, I can run with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool. Thank you.
yeah. That happens a lot.
I think I think literally in the last episode, I mentioned that pretty recently we started a cadence where every Monday morning we meet and play our game together at my day job. And I've done playtesting like that in the past, but for whatever reason, this weekly cadence of just we're going to sit down and play the game together no matter what state it's in is maybe the difference on this team, has been like tremendously valuable because it gives exactly what you're talking about. We first of all like have silly moments. I'm working on a fashion game right now, actually. So like at one point, one of the models like threw a hat at the judge, and we all like burst out laughing, and then that became a feature, you know. So it gives the space for that to happen. And then also, it just is exactly what you're mentioning. It's a space for somebody to go like, I don't know if this is very good, or I have this cool idea, and then everybody is already there and can talk about it for just a moment. And like an hour a week is as much as it takes for you to really have a good enough space to have those conversations. Awesome. All right, Petunio has our second question on deck. Petunio, you want to jump in?
Sure thing. Hi. So, what are your film inspirations that influence you as an artist?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I love films. I watch movies a lot with my dad. I really like, for environments, I have to go with Wes Anderson. Has really good environmental tell, and like the
Really?
color code. He has really
Yeah.
good style. Narrative wise, I really like It's Such a Beautiful Day. It has really good narrative and always got me on my toes. And just crazy, crazy story, as well as that story being enhanced by VFX, is Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think that movie was amazing.
I
Top
fucking
notch.
love that
So I
movie.
think those ones. Yeah. Please tell more. It's so good.
I mean, there's no more to say. It's if you have not seen it, go and see it right now. When I saw that movie the first time, I like taking myself on movie theater dates. I went by myself that time by chance, and I think I sat in the theater for like 30 minutes after watching it because I just needed like processing time.
Oh, wow.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, anything on science fiction, perhaps, or fantasy, like like for example, Blade Runner was a huge inspiration on
Blade
me,
Runner is really good.
and incredible, set decoration throughout the whole movie. And anything on science fiction or fantasy, perhaps. Even though you did mention
Lord of the Rings. I think fantasy Lord of the Rings has it. I don't know. I'm thinking about like niche movies that I liked, but I don't know if I watch niche fantasy movies. Maybe I should get into more of that. I know like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, but I haven't watched too much niche movies of that.
Gotcha.
I should get in on that. Thank you.
Lord of the Rings niche movie. Awesome.
Very niche.
Not many people know it. All right, thank you, Petunio.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic. All right, Rick has a third question for us. Rick, you want to jump in with your second question? Aging Rick.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mic. Yeah. So as you start out the process of building the environments, and you're just like, okay, I'm going to build something and I want it to tell a story, what would you consider your minimum understanding of the context of a space before you feel like you can confidently go in and be like, okay, I'm going to tell a story with the way I design this area?
I feel like that's a really good question. The reason why I'm laughing is no matter how much I study before I start an environment, I feel like it will never be enough. I feel like in order to create a good environment or in order to make it believable, you have to know, like, go into Wikipedia, read the history of the reason why these honeypots are created. Like, there was an asset that I made is if you open my art station, you can see like my first prop, uh, like a satchel that I made for our biome character to carry. And I had to learn weaving. Like, I had to watch a lot of YouTube videos about how they weaved just to understand the material and how that like weaving is made. And for my thesis, I had to understand the architecture of Islam, like Islamic architecture, and like it's yeah, definitely a lot of studying had to be done. There was a 2 week where I just studied how mukarnas are made and how the domes have to be architecturally plausible for me to create it. And it was hard, but I feel like you pull through it. Like, you just keep creating and keep studying, keep creating and keep studying the material. And I like that part the most, that I get to learn these small niche things just because I'm trying to create an environment about it.
Nice. So you've got these environments, and you want to build architecture that's inspired, but you have to learn like what are the architectural requirements, like what would be a shape that is not feasible based on their building patterns and strategies.
Exactly, yes.
Cool.
Amazing.
Well,
Thank you, Rick. Absolutely. There's next we have Nickam. Nickam has asked, how can I polish and enhance my project for sound and technical stuff?
Ooh. Well, I do have few friends of mine that are more into tech art, so I don't know if that's the best question to ask for me. I'm sorry. I try to want to get into sound and tech art. Right now, I just know a lot of 3D, but I think most of the time my tech artist friends have GitHubs or itch.ios that they put their projects there, as well as sometimes, because we were in college together, we made game jams. So game jams are also a really good way to get in and show your work. I would definitely recommend going to game jams if you want to showcase your technical design skills as well as making a game together with someone. I think game jams were a lot of like a keystone of me learning how to get along with people, communicate what I want, as well as create a good portfolio piece.
I think, why don't we generalize a little bit? So let's say somebody is working in environmental art. What are some of the ways that they can improve their world? How do you go about iteration and polish?
I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand?
No, I don't think so. We're extending the question.
Okay, for environment art, it's always good to start small. Starting to make an asset, not an environment, but an asset that you can tell a story with. We go back to the every prop has a story. So let's say get a teacup and try to understand who's drinking this teacup. Let's say it's this vintage teacup that you want to make, but recently the person that drank it had an affair with someone, so the teacup is broken because they heard the sad news. So like, try to create a scenery with that prop. Doesn't have to be a teacup, any prop. And then from a prop, we can get into starting to create a vignette of props. So multiple props, a table that has been scratched by a cat, and then the cat is sitting right next to there, looking very proud of its work. And then from that vignette, you can get into more, let's say, an environment, but just a smaller, like one screenshot environment of a bar. So yeah, starting small, then learning more, and then just keep upgrading slowly. Don't try to take a big bite. I think that's most of the time how we get ourselves burnt out, how we burn out. So starting small is always good. Just small bites a day.
Awesome. I love it. All right. This is an interesting one from Isaac. Isaac asks, have you ever had to create environment art based on promotional or advertising material, like the Pizza Hut advertising in Crazy Taxi?
Oh. No, I haven't, but that would be lovely, actually. I think definitely creating an environment based around an advertisement. Recently, we went to Substance Days in New York, and I get to meet people that worked in Coach, and they get to build this whole 3D ass environment where the Coach bag was the balloon. And I was like, that's such a good idea. It was like an outside area, and the Coach bag was a hot air balloon. And I think that's really like, there's also narrative in that. So even if it's an advertisement or not, any type of thing that you see around is always has a chance to be an art piece. So it's pretty cool. I would love to get into that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is one. So I'm the project that I'm working on now has a little bit of this. And I think for a long time when I was first getting started, I was very insistent on things being mine and things being unique to this world. And I don't think that's as necessary anymore. Or just like, I don't think that was ever quite right. I think it's still interesting to make a promotion or a piece of your world that's dedicated to Coach bags or whatever. And in fact, that's kind of fun because you're playing with this existing IP and this existing pool of knowledge. Humanity and your players will already have perceptions about this thing. And being able to play with that is a lot of fun and is not something that you can do if you're making something truly unique or bespoke. So yeah, I don't think it's I know that I myself, and I think in general, people who are just getting started view that as like the dark side of the industry, and I get that. But I think it's just a fun, it's just a creative box to be inside of, and it's a way to be like, all right, how can I make Pizza Hut interesting?
Definitely, I agree. Every piece that you make you should be proud of every piece that you make, whether it be for production purposes, for advertisement purposes. Be proud. At the end of the day, it's the work that you have done.
And as long as you're not like advertising something actually heinous, I mean, whoever's got the money, get your job in games however you can.
I agree. No, I agree.
Amazing. All right, I think we're about at time. Why don't we do a quick question for Misha? Misha asks, when you have a large environment and collaborate with others, how do you balance contribution between yourself and other artists versus creating a solo piece?
That's a really good question. I had an experience doing that during my third year at Ringling. Again, I did Biome with my friend Finley. You guys should also check out her game on Steam called Mold. It's really fun. You get to play as a bug. But during that time, what was recommended for us to have was our own scene and each other's scene, but we can use each other's assets. But what we tried to do was to keep our scene, my own scene. I tried to keep it like 70% of it was my own asset and 30% of it was Finley's assets. Whereas Finley's part was, there it is, that's Mold. It's a really fun game. You can smell it. But anyways, it's very cool. But whereas in Finley's part was 70% of her assets and 30% of the flowers were my assets. And at the end of the post that you want to put in your ArtStation or any portfolio sites like Rookies, Level 80, you should let them know that, this is a multiple asset, like I have done this with a friend. And then at the end, you can make one vignette area where you can showcase the assets that you have made and be like, these are the assets that I have made in this project. And definitely showcase roughness, base color materials, and occlusion roughness metallic. Those ones would be really good for recruiters to showcase, for recruiters to see your showcases, basically.
Yeah, I think that the question is also kind of larger because it's about collaboration in general. How do you balance input from multiple creative personas, and they may not be just environmental artists? And I think for that one, that really just does come down to like experience, and then hopefully having some kind of management that has a cohesive creative throughput. I think my biggest piece of advice to you, Misha, and to everybody listening is to try to let go of the ego as much as possible. I think especially in your early career, you'll find that a lot of your work just disappears, which is sort of depressing. You'll work on something for 3 months and then it just won't get into a game, or it'll get cut, or the studio will go out of business, or whatever. And unfortunately, that's just a part of the process of being a digital artist, I think. And the better you can enjoy your process and let go of the ego about having to have my work in the game, I think the better you can collaborate with people and make something that's wonderful. It's not important whose work it is, it's important that the game is wonderful.
I agree. Definitely agree on that. At the end of the day, we all want to make a good game. and cohesion goes a long way rather than your own ideas. There has times where I dropped my own thoughts because I like the other person's thoughts, or I thought that thought or that environment would go a longer way than what I had in mind. So definitely being humble is going to take you to longer places, or not only being humble, but being open to change your ideas and being open to communicate. Yes, iteration is key.
Iteration is absolutely key. All right, we have a question from LinkedIn. I'm going to do this as the last question. LinkedIn user says, I work with recent graduate students from game development, 3D modeling, animation, and VFX. What would be the best advice, resources, tools, and tips that you could share to support new grads that want to start their own indie studio?
Oh, that's a good question. I would recommend YouTube is always going to be the best source of tool and understanding, first of all, what game that you would want to make, because right now I'm in that the same boat that we want to make our own indie studio, as well as me being in WAI Studios. But definitely watch a lot of YouTube videos about how indie games got to be made, as well as joining Discord for support. And like Indie Game Academy is one of the best for supporting indie games, like by the name, as well as some other Discords that are pretty good, if I remember. But most of the time, it's definitely joining 80 level is good, Sierra Division, and just a lot of community. Finding community is going to get you a long way. And definitely asking for, how do I say, like, playing a lot, playtesting your own games. I think that would help. But what do you think?
I think that's about right. Founding a studio is definitely hard, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's a bit a big part of the question is like, what is your intention behind founding a studio? I think for anybody who is just getting started and doesn't yet have professional experience, it's frankly very unlikely for you to have any kind of appreciable income within years. It'll take years to make, even if you're making very quick games like a Peak or something like that, it'll still wind up taking years for you to really get into the flow and to make professional quality games. The main thing that we recommend is just to launch as many games as you can. We believe in learning by launching. And that, I think, is one of the biggest things. So find those communities like you're talking about, find mentors and collaborators as much as you can, and just every single game you release, push the quality, set a release date, stick to that release date, but in that window, push the quality as hard as you can every time, and always be aiming for whatever the objective is. The objective does not have to be money. That is okay. That is something that we're really trying to internalize here. If you're just making games because you love it, that's fine. But whatever the objective is, push towards that objective as hard as you can with every game you launch, and just never stop launching those games. Always push your boundaries. All right, we are at the end of our time. Before we say goodbye, Lara, would you like to give us some homework? So is there something we can do in the next week that'll take about an hour to practice what we talked about here today?
Yes. Well, I was thinking, I would want you guys to think about an ordinary object, or take an ordinary object and describe it in one sentence. Who owned it? What is the story of that object? What are the small details that you wouldn't see in the first glance but later see it? So try to write about that ordinary object that you can find around it, and try to create a story with just one object.
That's awesome. I love that. All right. So your homework is to pick an ordinary object somewhere in your space and write just a sentence or two. Its story. And then we love to see your homework. So post that on LinkedIn for us. You can tag the Indie Game Academy. You can tag Lara Guzelsoy. And you can tag me, Willem Delventhal, and we will be excited about it. If you're uncomfortable posting a LinkedIn, you can also just drop it in our Discord. There's links to join us down below. Awesome. Any last words of wisdom or anything you'd like to plug, Lara?
I'd love to say that keep going no matter what happens. And I know that right now the games industry is not looking too bright, but remember that why the reason that you started this journey for, and keep going. You know, that determination will go a long way. So I believe in yourself, because I believe in you.
I love it. The positivity is welcome. Absolutely. Don't stop believing in yourself. It is a journey, but remember that the journey is the part that's important anyway. I can tell you, once you get to the destination, you'll just be like, you won't even sort of realize you're there. You'll just start looking at the next journey. So enjoy the journey, figure out how to enjoy it, and figure out how to be resilient and happy and joyful as much as possible anyway. We will leave
Thank you
links
so much
to
for
Laura.
having me.
Absolutely. We'll leave links to Laura down below, so check her out, check out her art station, perhaps hire her, ? And otherwise, thank you for being here, Laura. It's been a great episode.
This has been a lovely time. I did not realize the time passed so fast.
We're already at the hour mark. All right. You can join us again. We are here every single week, Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So you can come by and join us next time. There's links to join the Discord down below. Ask your own questions live. All right, we'll see everybody again soon. Laura, thank you for being here. Those who asked questions, thank you for asking questions. And those who are just listening, as always, we ask that you think of just one other person who may enjoy this episode and send this episode along to them for us. All right, I think that's it. We'll see you again next week, everybody.
Game over.